Let's start with the session. Hope everyone can see my screen. So we'll be discussing about ChatGPT, the burning topic that's happening currently across the world, right? Before we go, just a quick introductions. So hi everyone, I'm Akhilesh and I'm Director of Privacy here. I take care of privacy implementations and also I'm a certified professional from IAPP. And along with me, I have Priya. She's the DPO of Axtria. DPO, sorry Priya, so a small introduction from your side.
So that's okay. Hi everyone. Glad to be here. And I'm DPO, Global DPO for Extrian, and at the same time, I'm leading governance, risk, and compliance for Extria. And looking forward to the session and having an interactive session with all of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Priya. Thanks for joining in and thanks for everyone for joining in.
Thanks.
So a little about Tsaaro. We are a privacy first firm helping organizations comply with privacy. We always come with the tailor-made solutions for the organizations, understanding their problem, and we are an ISO certified firm. So your data is safe with us, right? And this is behind me. And just small disclaimer before we start, even though we are coming from Saro and Priya is coming from Maxtria, our opinions are individual. It's individual professional judgments and nothing to be taken and we are not representing our firms, right? So disclaimer that we want to put forward. This is our personal opinions based on our understanding about the chat GPT and the potential privacy concerns. And this is only for educational purposes. Don't consider it as a professional opinion and implement it somewhere. So that's a disclaimer we want to start with, right? So today's agenda with just a quick introduction around the chat GPT, and then we'll jump on to the major concerns about the privacy concerns for chat GPT, how it is going to impact the business, and what kind of best practices we can implement, and what are the frameworks that are available in case if you're coming with an artificial intelligence or machine learning model, and a couple of case studies to take away from the session. So everyone knows what a chat GPT is, right? It's a natural language and artificial intelligence based model which can help us to generate a lot of meaningful information. It has taken information pre to 2021 and he has created a neural networks, right? And it's able to generate responses. Even it can chat in the natural language, right? Natural language is nothing but the language that we use to communicate with the people, right? So you can just raise a query and GPT will be able to understand the query, convert that into a mission readable language and come out with the output. So before we start with the privacy concerns, Priya, I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
what do you think the users of ChatGPT use cases where it can be potentially useful, right? Not everything is bad, right?
No, and to be very honest, it is. I'll not say that. We are seeing. We are all digitalized. We are on cloud. We see its benefits, and with every benefit, with every technology that we have, certainly there are risks associated with it. If we know how to balance them out, it can be a great boon. So to start with on a great note, ChatGPT is a great tool. There is no doubt about it. I personally have used it. I can give a quote an example. I needed something about data privacy with respect to China, and it gave me bang on answer. No questions about that, and it can be used. It can be integrated. But the key is the right balance between knowing what is acceptable with respect to compliance, security, and risk, and what is not acceptable, where there are like loopholes which can which can really put organizations, individuals into compliance and into violation and breach. So we need to use it, but at the same time, we should reach out to right folks, knowing that whatever use case we have, what kind of a risk are associated with that, and in case we can kind of take care of those risks and then go ahead.
Right, exactly. So there are even when we start professional journey, right? So obviously we started when ChatGPT came in,
Yeah.
it made my life easy as a consultant, right? If
Right.
something I need to draft a complex email, I go to
Exactly.
ChatGPT. I need to make something complex. It always helps me to plan it
Exactly.
better, write it better, right? In an effective manner.
Exactly.
If
But
it's not only
as
me, when one of my cousins, right? She's doing her MS in US, right? And any assignments that are coming in, the first thing that they go is to ChatGPT, write the
yes,
question, get the answer,
yes,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
It
It's
means
it's about you, we say it, for example, screen time. We should know how much time we are on screen. Similarly, it has great benefits, but at the same time, it is a totally new way. It is like it can go uncontrolled because it's like the moment you put something in there, it can reach to the last person in the world. So at least every individual should know what are its benefits and what are the limits so that they act accordingly. That is the key.
right, exactly. We need to know how we want to use it, when to use it, and when not to use it, right? So let's
Exactly.
look at some of the concerns that will come while using the chat GPT, right? So one of the biggest risks that I always feel is the vast amount of data that has been used to train, right? We don't have any control. We don't know what amount of data that is there and how it is protected, right? As a privacy people or security, right? We are always concerned about how the data is protected. So what do you think, Priya, in terms of the concerns that comes from the security with the huge volumes of data?
Exactly. And I think irrespective of the field we are in, we may be in finance, we may be in healthcare, we may be in bank sector, in even military sector, everything, for everything we have data. None of our data is our data. For example, even if I join an organization, my data is with my organization. When we do business for some other organization, their data is with us. End of the day, some or other, how data is being passed here and there. And as in today's digital world, data is the key. So with this chat gpt, the biggest risk that I see is use of that data. It's just a cut and paste where you can just pull out the data, cut it and paste it there. The most critical thing for any compliance person, at least for me as a compliance professional, is ensuring that there are no compliance breaches, because now everybody is aware about their rights. I as an employee have a data subject right. Customers, they have their privacy rights. That's why we have a data processor agreements in place. So everybody is concerned about their data. Me as an individual and organizations are, customer about their data, and we have an agreement. So when we are bound by an agreement, and then we randomly have a chat GPT on our laptop, where we have ability to just pick up some data, paste it there, it's a clear one. So that is a huge risk from the point of view one I see, and second is for the product-based organization. If we have product-based organization, we have code, we are our patterned, products. If somebody puts code in there, again, it's a huge breach for us. They may put it for just error correction and all. To them, it's a minor thing, but it's a big violation for us. So something like that. If you ask me as a compliance professional, two aspects: the data we have as individual and organization and customers, and secondly, any code, product-based things that we put on the chat GPT. That's a huge risk for us.
Right, exactly. This is an incident that has happened very recently, right? One of the organizations wanted a code optimization and put the entire code into ChatGPT. They
Yes.
achieved the result, but the code is out,
Out.
right?
That's exact. Yeah. And not
Right.
only
So
that,
it's the
the
biggest
moment
concern,
code
right?
is out, and in case you put some code on, on ChatGPT for some enhancement, there is a possibility of something getting adding on that, and it may be malicious. And when you are integrating that, taking that back into your system, it can really create a lot of vulnerabilities that you will not be aware about, but it may have transferred into your system.
So our intentions is good, but the outcome might be bad, right?
Yeah,
Because of the malicious actors.
yeah,
That's where the second concern comes from, right? If I input anything, I don't know how long it's going to be stored or where it is going to be used, right? So
exactly.
that's one of the second concern that we have is what happens to my data whenever I input in there. One, they have large volumes of data, and second, whatever queries I'm making in that are being stored and might be used for training purposes, right? We
Yeah.
know how it works. So
Yeah, and I'll just quote one more example to start on here is we do think about code, we do think about contractual compliances with respect to customer IP or our organization IP, but there is one key element also. Maybe somebody put some data with respect to PII data in there. It had phone number, email IDs, or it may have email IDs of organization colleagues as well. I'm just giving an example. It is very, very capable of creating spear phishings and phishing attacks. And it will be so realistic in nature, by no way you'll be able to know is that respective person. It's not a chatbot, it's done by a chat GPT rather than by a person. So we not only think beyond people, process, product, or technology, it is beyond that. If you put people information there, it can really help hackers in collecting that information and where spear phishing attacks on you as individual or as to the organization. So you can't even put personal information in there. You need to be careful.
exactly. So see, that lead to my third concern, right? So even though ChatGPT comes with one set of filters,
Yeah,
right? People have find a way that can bypass those filters and generate this. Like previously, if I need to do a hacking attempt, I need to go through hundreds of pages of books,
right,
right? Now I can use ChatGPT to create a malicious code within
right,
no time, right?
right, right.
So that's a big again, and the way we use it, right? Again, has some security concerns, and where we can easily bypass those filters.
Exactly, exactly. And I think the basic concept is there with everybody. For example, if we use an open source, ideally, organizations should get that open source vetted by security professionals to see, if they can, if they download it, is there anything malicious that will come with it? And in case there is security clearance, then only they use it. Similarly, for Chat GPT, for whatever the use case we are using, it is always advisable to take the same route. The way we are doing for open source, we're not allowing them to download directly. Similarly, whenever we are using chat gpt, at least as a professional, that's my experience, that we should always ask them at least to connect with the right SMEs, get it vetted, and then only take situation in their hand. It's not that free as you think. There is always a cost.
But coming to back to the AI and the chat GPT, right? One, major risk that comes is training data, right? Because the training data might not be accurate and that inaccuracies will be carried
Right,
out into the model, right? So
right.
that's one of the biggest risks in terms of the biases that it can create. We are coming from an analytics company. What do you think about the biases that can arise because of the inaccuracies?
It can, and to be very honest, because for that matter, somebody suggested some days back, can I use it for comparison? See, comparison, what you want versus what comparison it will give. You can't blindly just take it off and share that comparison. So,
Right.
what I'm trying to say is, you may have given it command and instruction to give comparison, but eventually, has it actually understood what you were supposed to do as an individual? And based on your large and long conversation with customer, no, you just gave it some commands and it gave it respect to that. So you can't rely on it because I honestly, before rolling out any guidelines in an organization, we tested it and we did all kind of things on ChatGPT. We can't rely on it. It didn't. It give in some cases for sure right answers and right comparison, but in a lot of cases it didn't give.
See, because the data that it has is only limited to 2021 and 2 years have passed beyond after that, right? So
Exactly.
in order to fill in that gap, it
Exactly.
might take some assumptions, which might even become a bigger risk than what we are intending to do, right?
Exactly.
So that's again comes into the risk aspect
And
that we need to take.
not only one, sometimes it does give recommendations. And though very interesting, just on a lighter note, these recommendations then you further give it to customer. And sometimes it doesn't look nice. You may not be knowing or unknowing it. The recommendation sometimes for data comparison and all that it gives you, you think, oh, this is great. I can recommend to customer. But eventually it may not be right thing to do. So that's what I reiterating from business. It is multifaceted. It's not only security hazard there is, privacy hazard there is. There may be business hazard there, we can see. Always advisable to have a committee. And in that committee, there should be business folks, security folks, privacy folks. We're together in case there is a use case. And any customer is very interested in kind of using that use case. You want to use that use case in any of your department and you think it's going to be great, fair enough. But that use case, business point of view, operation point of view, privacy, security, it should be vetted because when we look at a business case, it may not be
Hmm.
you may not be the right SME to judge what can be the underlying risk in there. At least that is my understanding that as a team, as a committee, all whatever work you are doing in chat, it should be approved by the respective committee.
So Priya, do you think that we need to like every organization should come up with an SOP kind of a thing for the
Yes,
people where which use cases can be done and which cannot be used?
100%, 100%. Because even though we have rolled out, but even before that, not only use cases. One is having a SOP for do's and don'ts, sharing them through multiple forms, and at the same time, you need security monitoring also. At DLP level, you need some monitoring at a web layer where you know what kind of a data is being put into cut paste into ChatGPT and all. Because you can't rely on people because awareness is one part, creating a committee and sharing SOP is one part, but still there are a lot of folks, even after reading, they don't take exact meaning of it. So one is prevention and one is detection. So at prevention and at detection level, we need to have some safeguarding.
What kind of regulatory challenges do you foresee because of the chat GPT?
Good thing about it is, to be very honest, it's new. Even customers are quite, they want to use it. And we know a lot of things can be kind of made better with this. But challenge is how to differentiate between IPs. For
Hmm.
example, you picked up some lines from some of the customer IP. Maybe it's just a PPT, and you picked it up, and you have to correct it. You put it, you paste it, and you want to just like grammarly make some good changes in there and some recommendations and put it there. But end of the day, you move that data from customer environment and put it here. That kind of understanding is challenging because if you actually ask me on ground, people don't understand that. They said, okay, I have not pasted PPT. I have not pasted any IP. I just take some content from there. Clear demarcation between what is an IP. To them, over the years, now they understand IP is okay. IP is code, IP is form, it is report, it is PPTs, etc. But when you snip something from those reports and paste it to them, it's an
Right.
evolving world. And with time, we also need to evolve. So making them understand that even the content that is part of those IP is actually an IP. So that is a
Right.
risk. That's what I'm saying. It's very important. One, to have prevention mechanism through SOPs, awareness, but to have a detention mechanism. In case you're able to detect what they are sharing, what they have put in there, it is very important. And then you should have alerts generated accordingly. Based on some keywords or something, you should have, in case you are an analytic organization, you are into healthcare, or you are into a very sensitive domain, your DLP should have a protection mechanism where it highlights to you on priority basis, okay, we have some alert something has gone out.
Mm.
Certainly, with prevention, detection is important.
Right, like when you're saying that, one thing triggered to my mind, right? I can just paste the content in the chat GPT and take it out outside of the organization too, right? If
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
that's again a
That's what
risk
I'm saying.
when,
It's an evolving work. I understand it's evolving for users. The day one day we'll tell them, okay, you need to be careful about this. Next day we go and say, oh, now you need to add one more thing. But that's the world we live in, Akhilesh. We can't help it because world was different before ChatGPT. It is different now. So policy and awareness and the way we look at all the system that certainly has changed, and we don't have an option.
who is the owner of any work generated through an AI model, right? For example, if I create a PPT using the AI, so who will become the owner of that?
See, that's what I'm saying. If you are using it for personal purpose, you are the owner.
Hmm.
It's very clear. If you had some work that was to be given to you and you had to create a PPT, for example, you had to do some analysis, you had to create PPT, you had to create workflow, and you use ChatGPT for that. It was an extra IP, sorry, it was a company's organization's IP, and you used that as an organization resource. So you will be, it will not be to an individual, it will be to the employee of that organization doing work for a customer. So the owner
Right.
will be employee who is working for that customer and creating this deliverable using ChatGPT.
That's true, right? Even though we are, if it's a client data that we are working on, at the end, the client has to be the owner, even though we are using the AI to generate that. Because of the chat GPT and access to the vast amount of data, right? I can easily copyright material, right? I can just
Yeah.
copy someone's idea, rephrase that and use it. How do we avoid that? Like being working in this area and copyright is being one of the biggest concerns and it's privacy concern too. What we
Yeah,
can do?
exactly. That's what I'm saying for anything. Akhilesh, and this is not related to generative AI or any chat. All the people who work for organizations. See, if you work for individual, you are accountable. I'm working on some PhD thesis. That's my problem. I'm using a laptop, personal laptop, and whatever I do there, I'm accountable. The moment I'm on any organization's asset or customer, I'm bound by a sign. I'm bound by a contract. I'm bound by. So automatically, whatever work do I do with respect to that organization or the customer. It is a pain. I understand it because that's why in security we say all the people who have laptop, they are our first line of defense, like we say in army. See, in security, we can have technology, we can have process, we can have people, and we'll have culture. If we have best of technology, if we have best of process, still every individual is having that. If people don't understand the do's and don'ts, and if there is no security culture, even if we have greatest first two parts, process and technology, we will not survive. The idea with the security culture and people to be 50% of any security framework. This is the reason. Because you guys are first line of defense for any organization, whatever comes to you, what you click, what you pay. So awareness to prevent is the key. You should be knowing that this is allowed and this is not. End of the day, you all are bound by any contract that you have signed. And in case you breach it, there are obligations. So it is not only risk for, I'll say, because I keep on telling this with an organization, it's not only risk that we see for organization or customer. Please understand there is an implication on individual also who was accountable for that. So everybody has to take that accountability because it is not easy. Anybody can go and cut paste.
Right. The second, again, an interesting point that we want to discuss, right? So it's collecting and processing large amounts of personal data, right? The biggest concern is ChatGPT. Even if you ask a question about where do you store the data, do you have a privacy policy? It just says that it's not applicable to me, right? But somewhere it is storing the data,
It
right?
is. I'll tell you. We went in detail through Chat GPT policy, to be very honest.
Right.
And like we do it for Facebook, Google, we looked at it. We looked at it every section. I'll say we have similar privacy policy. But as a data protection officer, data privacy officer, I exactly know the language because we deal in and out with legal folks. We understand the language they put it. The
Hmm.
language, if a non-data concerned person will see from this, they will not understand. But the tweaking is done in a such a way in case tomorrow as a data subject you go back and say this was my right, you have breached it, they will show you that policy and which will be clearly stating which you will not understand. The language is in such a way that by no world case can save you for that because it will be there and you will be before you are using ChatGPT, you are saying that I agree to the terms and conditions. And if you go to their
Right.
privacy policy, like all privacy policies, it looks direct, but it has a lot of other meaning in it because we deal with it in and out and we understand the language they have put. So they have safeguarded their interest in that way, like Facebook does it.
Right. Typical dark practices that they have.
Typical. That's what I'm saying. Typical. They are saying we are very, very much pro into it. And if you look at their policy, they are saying, okay, your responsibility, we are doing this. Who is going to read that document? Even when we have at our website or even any website, you'll see a lot of privacy policies in there. You accept a smaller consent. You never go to the detailed policy. And in that detailed policy, everything is written that we'll be using it for marketing, we'll be using for this. We never go and see. So it's same with chat.
And that is the reason even the data protection authorities are asking them questions about how they are using the data and whether
Right.
they're complying with the regulatory requirements or not. Maybe
Right.
we'll get a clear idea once we have see the judgments or the proceedings around the court. Right?
See,
Maybe.
exactly. I think it's like Google. We all are used to Google. We all are used. But eventually, it will be matured. There will be standards around it. But it's about now. The kind of POP it is in now. We need to.
And but the good thing is even the supervisory authorities are pretty active and tracking what kind of issues are arising.
Right.
And even the fines that we are nowadays looking at, it's no longer just a security concern, right?
Right.
They are looking into privacy related violations and fining. So that's again a good step, positive step towards having the compliance.
But it's a nightmare for compliance people. I can assure you on that. But then there is always a solution.
And the last concern that I have is around the rights of the data subjects, right? Do you think ChatGPT would be able to, in future or like currently, would be able to help us with the rights, right? Maybe I
Can't.
want to know what information it has about me. It simply says I don't have, right?
Yeah, it does say, but at the same time, if you put any data on, for example, if Twitter you put any public data with respect to your health. So now there is a question: is this a public data? Can I use? Because I have publicly put that data. For example, my reports, health report. I have put it for public view on Twitter. Now you can download it. It looks like okay, it's public. I can download, but you can't.
Hmm.
There are governing laws behind it. It looks so. There is a consolidator who can take that data. He needs to be in agreement, and then only. So what looks very natural and okay to do, if you take it from law perspective, it is not. So to answer your question for chat GPT also with respect to data subject right, if you go to their consent, you will see all those aspects in there with respect to detention, with respect to how they are collecting it, where they are further moving in this down the line. That all is there. International transfers, what kind of a safeguard they are in. But end of the day, there is a line. Whatever you are committing, it's your own.
Simple. What are dark practices or the dark patterns that we do? I'll take that question, Suraj. So, what dark patterns are nudging the user, like when we are coming to a website or any application, forcing the user to choose an option that is favorable to the organization instead of to the user, right? That's what we call it as dark patterns or practices. Simply put forward, like when you're going, making you accept something, terms and conditions that you're in general not agree with, right? So those we call it as dark patterns.
And that's why, just to add on this thing, EU has specially come up with the moment you ask for a consent, they are asking, at least for EU professionals, at least EU data subjects, they are asking to categorize that consent. You can't have one consent for everything. They are asking
Right.
that in case you need to reach out to our data subjects, then you need to put on different captions and options and they can select. It can't be one comma, 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 and they are selecting all. So that kind of they see these dark patterns and then eventually every year they try to improve on. Now these are the new guidelines.
So we have an interesting question. So once the DPDP bill passes, right, do we will that increase the accountability and transparency of such companies?
See, but to be very honest, our organizations are already working. They already have a corporate. In case we are a multinational company or we are working, our businesses are with their data transfer from different location is they already are sanitized about. But in case we ask about organizations that are purely operational in India, the way I see it, still security will be 85% and privacy will be 15%. When I look at that to India privacy law, certainly security is on top. That's their utmost priority, and that we can visibly see through the draft that is created. Privacy, they have given it due diligence and value, but I'll say around 20.
So let's move on to the next part of how it will impact the business, right?
Yes.
See, when we started with the discussion around how a person has put the code into the chat GPT and how now the organization is pretty popular because of that, right? On the negative side. So if you not used properly, it can cause damage to the brand reputation,
Oh,
right?
yes, yes.
So
A
what,
small
Priya,
thing,
what do you think how it will impact the business?
completely. I can assure you, as in today, if you ask me of all the monitoring I do, what are the first things I check? For example, if I do monitoring every day and based on the reports that we have, the first thing keyword I search for is ChatGPT because I want to see what has gone out. So I'll say that even a small ripple effect, even if something small goes out with respect to data or with respect to any IP that customer has given, because we have every customer has signed agreement, or that is a very normal thing. It's not only about what we signed with external customers that are not based off India, even with India. I think there's a very basic practice of having confidentiality and all data protection clauses. It is the biggest thing. Even if you have a small incident that looks like a small incident to you, to be honest, it can have a very big ripple effect on the brand, very big ripple effect on the brand. So that's what I'm saying. To us, it is a key area. And to track it, I know a lot of organizations have kind of stopped it. On from their organization laptop, nobody can access it. So they are like, okay, we don't want to take that even risk of anybody putting anything in there. But then we always there is a thin line difference between doing business and maintaining security. We have to find a middle path somewhere. That's what I'm saying. It is a big risk, but at the same time, it can be a big boon. There can be a lot of optimization we can do for customers. But as I said, only after approval from right SMEs with respect to privacy, security, and business, then only we
True. Like when we as a consultants, like let us say if we are relying on ChatGPT,
yeah,
right? Again, if we don't do our research and rely on ChatGPT and come
yeah,
up with this suggestion to the people, right? It
right.
can backfire too. It can result in loss of consumer trust or the customer trust. They don't believe us.
I'll tell
That's
you
why
from my
whatever results that come in, we need to validate them. Right?
right. Right. I'll tell you from my personal experience. Just last week only, we were researching on something. I'll just put an example with respect to maybe PIPL, China privacy. If I went to their actual website and what I looked there and the inference it made and the inference that was in ChatGPT, these were two opposite things. So that time, if I would have relied on what ChatGPT gave, it would have been bad. Bad thing coming from a DPO. So what I'm trying to say is, even if we have a ChatGPT, the always ideal thing, in case you are doing in research, is going to the right sources. Government, for example, IAPP, or for that matter, for example, China. Every country have their own laws, regulations that they have documented. It is always good to refer them rather than on ChatGPT. I can assure you, the same thing may have a different meaning because the way they are projecting it, putting it. I can assure you because we went into a 1 hour discussion because what I understood was different what was written in the actual website for PIPL. There may be change of understanding the way they are putting that content and the way we interpret from that and what actually was the meaning. It can be catastrophic. So though we may have information in there, but I will never rely on it.
It can be like that, right? Since they rely on the lot of data that is there on the internet,
Yeah,
and not every website can be authentic, right? I can create a website and write something about the China SBI bill, and ChatGPT might pick that information and post it to,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So unless we know the validation of the source, we'll never be able to confidently say that this is accurate information.
Exactly, exactly. And it depends, Akhilesh, also it depends on the kind of search you are doing. If you are doing it for business, which is do and die, because it can be a compliance breach. For example, China, there can be compliance breach because certainly we know the kind of regulations it. If it is a lighter kind of a thing, which is not a do and die, or it's not a compliance matter, and it's not going to be of harm, it's just good to have, not must to have. Fine, you can still rely on it and not cross-validate it with its main source because it will not make that. But when it is must to do and it does make an impact, it is. I'll say it's not.
So that's what, like, once we understand, once they become more transparent and define the sources and exactly identify the authentic sources, and ChatGPT will have a lot more applications, right, than
Right,
what we are currently seeing.
right.
And
I
one,
sorry.
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think for example for Google, the moment we go, we know what the source we are opening, we are clicking on. We all have a choice. You search for. I'm just an example. You search for any privacy. There are multiple websites that will come, but at least we exactly know the sources. Wikipedia is there, other sources that are giving. Ideally, either they pull on all the sources where they are putting this data from. Still, that makes sense. That okay, these are the 6 websites from which they have collated this answer and given to us. But that's not there.
And most importantly, in negative impact on productivity, more reliance on ChatGPT. We might lose all the basic skills, like especially the students community, right?
Yeah.
Over relying
Yes.
can
Yes.
cause a havoc, right?
Yes, and it becomes the key because the people who come from, for example, we have lot of folks. I think every organization has a lot of folks joining from campus. Certainly, they being from this generation, they certainly want to use it. So the first thing we, as an organization, do it. We just first talk to them and tell them about acceptable usage policy, especially for things like these ChatGPT on, because they are tend to using it day in day out, and they don't. There is a very blurred line between business because they don't understand the business when they join in, and it can really cause a lot of problems. So yes, as you rightly suggested, the new people who are joining in an organization, we see them as a bigger risk. They don't understand operation and business when they join, but at the same time, they should know what is acceptable, not acceptable. So we take that extra pain on kind of talking to them separately, making them understand that what kind of implications it can.
So, like Devank has pointed an example, right? So, when someone searched in ChatGPT about themselves, it populated results saying that you're already dead. So
Okay.
that kind, that kind of issue. See, it's all about where it's getting the article and where it's getting the information, right? So maybe a person with a similar name might have died, and it would have attributed this person to that person and said the person is dead, right? And this person tried restricting the usage of data, but
Yeah.
still there's a legal claim that is going on. It
Yeah.
can have a negative impact, right? And it can create a negative stress, like for example a fake news about a person, right? And whenever someone searches about that person, the news will automatically come up, and that
Exactly.
again create
Exactly.
psychological issue. Right. So what are the best practices for using ChatGPT? Right. So what do you, Priya, what do you think can organization implement? And even not only from the ChatGPT perspective, even from an AML perspective, right? What are the best practices that should be implemented?
Yeah, I think they are coming paid version of, and not only paid, you start using it, and then you will say, and this happened really, and I want to all warn all the folks in here. You start using it because it's number of bytes, it's number of words, or what the kind of request you put it on that, and you say, okay, it's just this much amount, and you kind of pay that amount, and then whenever you use it, it will say you have exceeded that limit, and you end up paying a lot. So be careful about those kind of things in ChatGPT. But from business perspective, I'll say we do, when we reach out to customers through any RFPs or RFIs, we do demonstrate our security posture. We do demonstrate our privacy posture. Trust me, without which nobody will kind of hire us, especially data analytics. And I think not even data analytics, any organization. I think the first thing I can tell you, Akhilesh, the shift. If you ask me 5 years back, the questionnaire we used to receive in RFI or RFP, it used to have 5 to 6%, maximum 5% of security privacy. Eventually, every year it increased. I can assure you from last year January till this year January, now it is 80% security and privacy questions, and then only 20% to business and function and product. That's how the complete transformation is there. Now we go to business and see your RFPs are 80% talking about security privacy, and the business and functional is just 20%. Now you need to understand it's a center pillar. Between to privacy, we do talk about it because we say to customers that we are committed for privacy, for security. And now everybody is having monitoring system. Some may have it soft monitoring daily, some may do it weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it is. But every organization, small, big, is having a security monitoring system. It is always good, and I think if organization has right integrity practices in place, in case there is a breach, in case rather than they coming back and saying, hey, our monitoring system detected it, it's always good to proactively look for it and go for it and talk to customer that this has happened. Because, there at least we are collaborating, and collateral damage is being saved. Their SOC monitoring system reviewing it, identifying it, and then coming back to us and saying, hey, this was a violation, and it goes into looking at contracts, what we have agreed. So it's always good to be transparent, Akhilesh, as you have right.
Exactly. So one the biggest concern that comes is the transparency. And one more thing that as an organization we need to define is a fairness measures, right? So if everything goes well, how the system should look like. That's the most important aspect when we come to any kind of an AI or an ML model, right? Is it delivering the right results, right? We just cannot say, as someone pointed out, that always the information provided by chat GPT might not be accurate. That is, if you're processing information, if you're generating results, then you cannot say that my information might not be accurate because people might rely on it knowingly or unknowingly. For industry experts, they might not rely on the results, but a normal employee might do a research using ChatGPT and might come to a conclusion which can create issues, right? So having that proper transparency and fairness goals is one of the most important. And as we discussed before, right, having encouraging user responsibility, having that SOPs, starting with the acceptable usage policy, again, that will help in terms of defining what cases we need to use and what cases we should not use, right? And security measures, Priya rightly pointed out, having the right monitoring solutions, having the DLPs that enable us to protect the data is again one of the factors that we need to consider. Regular audits on what and how they are using it, where we can improve, which use cases and which we should not be used. Audits are important. And understanding the regulatory compliance requirements. Like, for example, Google Analytics has been banned in 4 of the European countries. So keep an eye what the regulatory aspects are saying, right? So that we are not misusing the data.
And I think I just quote it in a different way. We do go to doctor even after what Google suggests us. I may search for a headache, I may search for a fever, but still we end up, in case it's something minor, we do go to, we just search for it. I think, but in case we find a real problem, we do go to doctor. We don't rely on actually Google prescription. It's exactly same for your organization, for customer. You are, because you see it from different perspective, multifaceted perspective. That certainly that chat GPT or chatbot may not be able to see. So even in Google, if you go, headache can also kill you. But that's what I'm trying to say is what you get as an information and how to take it. where you're using that information is the key.
Exact, great example. So that's exactly where we can relate, right? You can use it for smaller things, but whenever you're using it for larger things, take it with a pinch of salt and always consult the experts. There are few frameworks and models that are available in the market. It's not like that's completely new. That is something that's coming up. So Singapore has come up with an artificial intelligence governance framework,
Yeah,
and we also have a framework from NIST, right? They're coming up. It's not only for ChatGPT, even when your organization wants to use an artificial intelligence or a machine
right,
learning model, right?
right,
What kind of things that needs to be done? What needs to things to be implemented, right? So that can be taken up from these frameworks. These
right.
frameworks are really helpful if you're planning to implement certain things, right? I think we are almost at the end of time, right? Thank you so much, Priya. It was really, really insightful. People can take away some things from this session. I would really hope for that. But
Any,
it was a great, great session from your side, Priya.
thanks. Anytime, anytime. Thank you so much. You can reach out to me LinkedIn in case you have further questions. And thanks for having me here, Akhilesh. My pleasure.
Thanks.